Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Niagara Hockey Coaches Seminar, our webinar series. We hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. My name is Murray Nystrom. I'm one of the founders of the Niagara Hockey Coaches Seminar, along with Wes Wolf, Greg Capillero, and Wayne Chapman. And I'll be moderating today's presentation. A couple items before I introduce Josh Hoetmer. At the Niagara Hockey Coaches Seminar, we've always had a link with some social awareness as part of what we do here. And so we wanted to bring your attention to an important cause that has some significant hockey ties. Next week, the Friends of McGill University Hockey will be offering a 2-day seminar, hockey coaches seminar. And there is a registration fee to that seminar next week, but the fees are going to be donated to an education fund that'll help the families of Martin Ruche and Kelly Nobes. Both were McGill alum. Martin was a popular team captain and a community leader, and Kelly Nobes was the coach of the McGill hockey team at the time of his passing. Both of these guys passed away suddenly, leaving young families. If you're interested in helping out, just check out the Friends of McGill Hockey Twitter feed. There's more details there on what's being offered. I know Jamie Compton from the Winnipeg Jets, Martin Raymond, who most recently was with the Ottawa Senators, and Dave Urquhart with the San Diego Gulls are all involved, and they're trying to do some good education and as well as helping out those two families. So give that some consideration if you would. Today's presentation will be about 45 minutes in length. And we're hoping to have a 5 or 10 minute Q&A session at the end of the session. And so with that, it gives me great pleasure here to introduce Joshua Hoetmer. Josh is one of the many fantastic people I was able to meet during my Lethbridge experience the last couple of years. A mental performance coach. He's also an instructor at Lethbridge College. Teaches sport and exercise psychology as well as psychology of sport. This November, he'll be sitting on the managing council for the Canadian Sports Psychology Association as the representative from Alberta. He's the last 2 seasons, he's been a member of the coaching staff of with Hockey Canada, with the most recent World Under-17 Hockey Challenges. The last 7 years, he's worked with the Vauxhall Academy of Baseball, which is located in southern Alberta. He supports the University of Lethbridge Pronghorns Leadership Academy and has spent the last 3 seasons working with the Western Hockey League's Saskatoon Blades. Today, Josh is going to be talking about resiliency, a topic that has performance implications, and as coaches, we're continually guiding our players to experience and embrace all that is included in that road to success. So with that, I'm going to turn the screen over to Joshua and welcome Josh, and everybody enjoy the presentation.
All right. Well, thanks, Murray, for that introduction. That was a lot of kind words, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, let's get started here. Share the screen, and we should be good to go. All right. So first off, I'd like to say thank you to the Niagara Hockey Coaches Seminar Group for providing me this opportunity to share some information, and specifically thank you to Murray for inviting me to take part in the great work and what they're offering to coaches across Canada, the US, and around the world. So it's exciting to be a part of it, and hopefully everyone that's tuning in can take away a thing or two at the end of this presentation. So let's get into it. Resilience and evidence-based approach. Evidence-based really being hunkered down in the best available research while applying your own expertise and experience in delivering the information. So that's what we'll be looking at today. Okay, we're going to look at a few different things. We're going to start off talking about mental toughness and grit, what's going on there currently with the research and it as a construct. We'll get into the definition of resilience. What is it specifically? How can we develop resilience through an evidence-based approach? Then we'll look at some examples coming out of the literature right now with what they're seeing with studying resiliency in coaches and teams. Before we get into the material, I do feel it is my professional duty to educate those who I work with in regards to what my professional title is. I am a mental performance consultant. I am a professional member of the Canadian Sports Psychology Association, and I just want to speak to some of the details and a little bit of the importance of what the association stands for in Canada. I'm going to speak specifically to Canada and not the United States and the other groups and associations that exist across the world. So for those who are unaware of the CSPA, the Canadian Sports Psychology Association continuously strives to ensure that members have adequate knowledge, skills, and experience to develop mental performance services in Canada. Specifically, the Canadian Olympic and Paralympic Sport Institute network across Canada aim only to use individuals who are professional members of the CSPA, and those who are not, they ask to pursue membership as soon as they can. You might be wondering, why is this important? It does definitely help filter the noise when it comes to sports psychology in Canada. Currently, we're in a world right now where marketing trumps competence with Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, podcasts, and YouTube. There are individuals out there who are marketing themselves as a profession that might not have the credentials or training behind their name. Absolutely, there are individuals who can still provide excellent ethical and professional services to your teams or the athletes or yourself that are not members of the Canadian Sports Psychology Association. So I definitely urge you to do your homework on the individuals you hire, just as you would with any other position. There are a lot of life coaches and psychologists who claim they're sports psychologists, but with little to no training in this area of work. Also, a handful of people who've played sports, read a couple books, and now are marketing themselves as a mental skills coach or sports psychologist. Now, I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit here, but once again, I think it's important for those participating in this to understand why this is important to discuss. In the CSPA, only those members who meet licensing requirements from a regulatory body are able to term or use the term psychologist. So for example, I'm just going to be a little bit wordy, but stick with me here. So provincial laws establish the rules for use of a professional title. Any professional who is not a registered psychologist, but who uses the professional title of sports psychologist or sports psychology consultant does so in violation of professional psychology licensing regulations across Canada as mandated by a province's Health Professions Act or by general provincial legislation. Okay, and that specifically licenses the practice of psychology. So at the end of the day, if you are a registered psychologist, you can call yourself a psychologist, but if you're using the terms loosely, it is illegal and frowned upon. To get into it a little bit more, here's a simplified example of where I would fall on the continuum of behavior with training, the training and education that I've acquired that I continue to work on. So as a mental performance consultant, I am existing in this world, working with individuals where we would consider, normal functioning with some minor dips, and really trying to work to take those normal behaviors and actions and turn them into optimal functioning. So once again, I just think it's, my professional duty to clarify that information, as we can argue right now the sport psychology and the applied world of sports psychology is the wild, wild west. And some education is still needed to be done in order to help improve our field. And with that, let's get into the presentation here. So I want to clarify a few things. We're not going to talk about mental toughness today. And once again, we'll get into a little bit later. I'm not saying that, mental toughness is a bad thing, but there is some information that needs to be shared. So in this example here, there's been over 30 published academic papers, and I would argue there's a lot more than that, involving 44 world-class researchers. And in that, there is no agreement on the definition of what mental toughness is. Okay, researchers and sports psychologists cannot agree on what mental toughness is. And to make the waters even more murky, as much as 75 components supposedly make up mental toughness. So a lot of information there, and like I said, it makes the waters quite murky in regards to what is mental toughness when we are talking about it. Now, I'm not also talking about grit. Grit has more recently become popular with a book that came out. Now, I'm not saying that grit isn't valuable to talk about, but when you look into the research, it's starting to look as if it's just a redundant concept and almost a restructuring of mental toughness. A colleague of mine recently pointed out that actually some research is suggesting that the measurement or assessment that the group that talks about grit has created might actually have some use and some purpose, but definitely still more work needs to be done. Okay, so this is why we're going to stick with resiliency. Now, for me as a professional who is trained and educated to utilize good research and science and trying to make ethical choices and exercise competence, using mental toughness and grit is challenging. And personally, it's a maze to navigate. In a way, it's almost career suicide if you don't use that language, because athletes understand it, coaches understand it. The language is out there. I mean, there are a lot of people making a lot of money on books and selling mental toughness and grit. Are these books doing damage to people? For the most part, probably not. And I'm not going to, paint with wide brush strokes that it's a bad thing. But when there is no scientific consensus on what it is, it's frustrating when I see people are selling a magical formula of 5 steps to achieve this, 10 minutes to get that, so on and so forth. And we're talking 30 plus definitions, 75 plus components. There's a lot to unpack there. So these books provide interesting anecdotes. They provide great stories, great perspectives, which have a lot of value, but more work needs to be done when we're talking about it from a scientific perspective. I mean, I use the language of mental toughness and grit, like I said. We use it in Hockey Canada. It's probably posted in the majority of our locker rooms. It's on our shirts. It's incorporated in our team identities and culture. Players understand it. Coaches understand it. People get it. We feel it. We know it exists. But at the end of the day, it's a concept that still needs to develop a bit more. We'll continue to use it, but when we do, I suggest we use it carefully. So on that note, we'll get into talking about psychological resilience and the topic of today's discussion. So to keep it simple, the definition of psychological resilience is the ability to use personal qualities to withstand pressure. And this is something we'll get into as we go on. But some interesting information over the past decade, the importance of developing resilience has been recognized not only in sport, but in other pressurized performance domains. So for example, the United States Army invested $117 million to build their soldiers and their performers and improve their psychological resilience. In 2013, on World Mental Health Day, it was reported that building resilience into business enhances both employee well-being and performance. And recently, with the British government, they've invested an equivalent over $500,000 in building school children's resilience. So there's a lot of great initiatives happening across the world in regards to developing that psychological resilience within individuals and groups. So this is where resilience gains its strength over the concepts of mental toughness and grit. That's because the vast majority of researchers can come to a general consensus of what psychological resilience is. And for the most part, most researchers agree that for resilience to happen, both adversity and a positive adaptation must be evident. What are we talking about here? Adversity can be seen on a spectrum from mild adversity to strong adversity. Okay, so everyday work hassles to death of a family member, or for your players that you work with, practice challenges to getting healthy scratch to traded or becoming seriously injured fall on the spectrum from mild adversity to strong adversity. The important thing to note here that this is very context and individual specific. Right, one person might interpret a mild adversity at work as whatever, a day in and day out occurrence, while somebody might interpret that same experience as being, quite intense and quite frustrating and quite adverse. So it is specific to everybody, based on their experiences and how they've developed their resilience skills. Adversity is usually interpreted with being negative. But actually some of the literature is starting to suggest that adversity can also tie in a little bit in regards to maybe positive experiences as well. So getting a promotion, maybe navigating the nuances of a new marriage required the use of personal qualities to manage that disruption and positively adapt to that change. So what we're starting to look at here is some of the information in regards to stress. So there's positive stress and negative stress. Negative stress is called distress, right? Losing money, breaking up, getting traded to a team you don't want to, that will cause distress. And then there's positive stress called eustress. And this is winning the lottery, getting that dream job, meeting the partner of your dreams, right? That's a very positive experience, but it is causing stress and causing an imbalance between, you know, the demand and your capability to manage that demand. So adversity, we can look at it on a spectrum as well in regards to good experience and bad experience. Positive adaptation. Once again, this is also looked at in a spectrum based on how we're assessing it. But for example, we can look at kids in school. You can look at their academic achievement based on that kid's level of education or ability. Are they learning or not learning the material, which would be that adversity, right? The challenge of learning a new concept, a long division for a kid, that could be seen as adversity. Now, are they achieving academic success? If they are, positive adaptation. If they're not, how can we help that individual overcome that adversity, overcome that challenge to learn, and then have that positive adaptation of academic success? If we're to look at a military example, individuals who experience intense action, the indicator for a positive adaptation could simply be returning with the absence of no psychiatric or mental health issues, instead of looking at that individual returning from action and going, oh man, that indicator of success was they were optimally functioning. Well, let's simplify it. Maybe our criteria needs to be a bit more relaxed. So when you're looking at that military example, them simply returning home from action, the positive adaptation was that there was an absence of a mental health issue. So hopefully that makes sense. And if there's any questions, we can talk about it at the end as well. You can think of this in the same way if you have a player who isn't succeeding in a certain drill or understanding a certain system. Well, potentially our criteria to assess them is too high for where that individual is at, or maybe their adaptation is progressing a bit slower than expected. So that's another piece we can look at as well. A few things that we should understand when looking at resilience. A lack of resilience should not be confused with weakness. Resilience and vulnerability coexist in everybody. At some point, any individual can succumb to extreme adversity and hardship. Research shows that failing to cope with adversity can eventually lead to growth and enhanced resilience. And adversity can be required for re-evaluation and reflection, leading to frank communication, enhancing relationships, stimulating learning, gaining perspective, humility, and potentially a new beginning. So how can it be developed? Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be delivering a magical 5-step process or a magical 10-minute toughness fix. It's not cookie cutter. It's not going to be answered by taking an assessment. There's many pieces, just like in all of our domains. If you're a goalie coach, a skills coach, head coach, assistant coach, there's many pieces to delivering excellent services within those domains. There's many pieces in delivering excellence to services as a mental performance consultant when talking about resiliency. So it takes work, observation, assessment, development, no magical recipe, but there is some evidence now in regards to what is an approach that we can use to get the ball rolling when trying to develop resilience. And this is coming out of the UK with the work done by David Fletcher and Mustafa Sarkar. So here is the model that we will look at in each component. So this has been proposed and developed based on a wide range of evidence. This will always be a work in progress. Okay, it will further be refined. It'll continually be adapted, particularly in how to optimize both the well-being and performance of individuals across domains in sport, business, medicine, and so on. But that's the magic of the scientific method. It will continue to be reviewed, continue to be analyzed, tweaked. But in the meantime, this is a great holistic and systematic approach to looking at how to develop resilience in our aspiring performers. So the first piece we're going to look at is personal qualities. This is the cornerstone of the program, and that's the individual's personal qualities. What is a personal quality? We'll go through this pretty quickly and touch on a few pieces that are important within this. But to summarize, personal qualities are the psychological factors that protect an individual from negative consequences. And these are the factors of our personality, and then the skills that we personally have as well. Personal qualities with personality. So these are qualities that contribute to an individual's enduring and distinctive patterns of feeling, thinking, and behaving. It's multi-layered and consisting of dispositional traits, characteristic adaptations, and self-narrative identities. And personality is more stable as we age and as we go through life. They are more difficult to change, and they are, like I said, more stable. And here's some examples of some personality characteristics. There's the typical ones that we're well aware of being extroverted, the perfectionist, optimistic, the narcissist. But there's other characteristics as being proactive, intrinsically motivated, task-oriented, and so on. But we don't need to necessarily get into the details of each one today. But important for us to touch on and have an understanding that this is what we're talking about in regards to personality. Now, a little bit more specific we can get into with this piece. This is kind of more that mental skills training that we would incorporate with our athletes individually or with a team. But this is looking at the personal qualities in regards to the skills and abilities that our athletes have to use these techniques and tools strategically used to enhance an individual's performance and functioning. So this is where we would be using self-talk training skills, attentional control, arousal control, goal setting. You would do preparation as a part of that as well. So these are the skills and processes. Now, combining the personality and developing the individual skills, we hopefully have these desirable outcomes where we see our athletes are now, optimally motivated, right? They can regulate thoughts, they can create good mental images, they can maintain attention on what matters, they can automatically execute skills, they can recognize support. Perceived social support is massive. It is one of the more important areas for an athlete in regards to coping with stress. If an individual perceives they have a lot of good social support in their life, they're more likely to manage stressful situations, specifically, looking at the transition research with athletes moving around. Now, I'm going to get into the weeds on this a little bit more because there is a key point to make here. There is a difference between the processes and outcomes. Too often in our field, individuals are teaching and using this information correctly. So for example, they would talk about skills being intrinsically motivated. They would say being emotionally intelligent is a skill. That is incorrect. So confidence is not a skill. Emotional regulation is not a skill. Those are outcomes based on your personality and training skills. Okay, for example, if you take someone who is optimistic, looking at the personality, train them with goal setting, self-talk, and imagery. This is that process. You will hopefully have an outcome to someone who is more confident. So let's look at this a little bit more. I'm really trying to do a good job of really keeping all of this simple for everyone on the call, as psychology and mental performance can be a little confusing and a little wordy at times. So like I said, I'm trying my best here to simplify it. So looking at the individual's personality characteristics, working our way up this model, up this pyramid, plus developing their psychological skills, utilizing goal setting, self-talk, and imagery. The outcome will hopefully be an individual who is more confident, okay? This is the process of mental training. This is how you would look at an individual, assess what is their personality characteristics like, where are their skills at, how can we work with both of those to get someone to, be more confident or be able to display these desirable outcomes that we talked about here. Managing stress, have better concentration. Okay. Moving on, we will now jump into an area that we're going to spend a little bit more time on, talking about facilitative environment. Now, for resilience to be developed for sustained success, a facilitative environment needs to be created and maintained. So if you can take a moment and think about your most enjoyable experiences playing the game, maybe great experiences in a place of work, or maybe when you've gone to school, we're talking about the day in and day out. These all probably occurred in a good environment. Really, when you're thinking about those favorite memories or those favorite experiences, there's probably some pieces in that environment that were facilitative and we're bringing you back day in and day out. But we have to keep in mind, it's going to be different for everyone. Resilience is influenced by the environment and a massive amount of factors, right? We can look at social factors. Who is the individual hanging out with? Who are they influenced by? Cultural, family background. Where are they from? In my experience with Hockey Canada, we're bringing together players from the WHL, QMJHL, OHL. You got guys from junior A hockey. You have individuals who are committed to the NCAA. And then also observing players from around the world, US players from Sweden, Finland, Czech Republic, Russia. And then also within that cultural, you have kids who are from urban centers, rural centers, small towns, big cities. Those experiences all add to who they are and how resilient they may be. Organizational structure, what does ownership look like within your team? Was staff like? What are their experiences? What's the structure of your organization? The political beliefs of an individual, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, whatever they believe in has an influence in their resilience. Economic, lower, middle class, upper class, money, little money, lots, no money. There's a variety of components that influence an individual. Occupational, what does their family do? Are they farmers, doctors, oil and gas, teachers, nurses? Do they work at a grocery store? Do they own their own business? Are they entrepreneurs? Technological, right now as an example with a program that I'm involved in, we have players across Canada and some of them don't have great access to good internet because they're on the farm or they're in parts of the country that just don't have great cell and internet services. So when you're trying to do webinars like this, you might not get everybody. Individuals' competence with computers, equipment technology. We can even argue the equipment technology in our sport, not just our phones and everything else. So there's a lot that goes into really trying to understand an individual and where they come from. The relationship. So this model is going to be the basics for understanding environments. So we can see here support being on the bottom, challenge being on the top here, and then these two together work in regards to hopefully where we can see performance go. So for example, if we are providing high support as well as experiencing high challenge, we should hopefully see performance end up in this area over here. Let's get into this a little bit more. Let's look at some of the definitions to help frame really what we're looking at a little bit more. So challenge is seen as expectations that people instill, or the expectations of people to instill responsibility and accountability. So for coaches, this is your expectation that the player will be responsible and accountable in working hard in practice, eating right, sleeping enough, making good decisions, preparing for games. And we can also increase those expectations. So we expect you to sleep more. We expect you to work harder. We expect you to prepare the right way as a young professional. And then we can also support our athletes and support the staff and the people around us through building relationships, providing a holistic approach to development, covering all the bases, mental, physical, technical, tactical, integrated support teams, having a proficient staff. These are the pieces that will support our athletes to meet the challenge and the expectations that we have of them. For example, with Hockey Canada, the amount of staff, the amount of resources that get provided to the players is immense, but that's also a result of the challenge that these kids are facing at 16 years old in facing off against the other top 16-year-olds from across the world. So if we sent one coach one athletic therapist and a part-time equipment manager, we're probably not supporting those athletes to meet a challenge to the best of their ability. But when you're sending head coach to assistant coach or goalie coach, mental performance, you have athletic therapist, equipment manager, team doctor, you have director of operations, you are now creating that environment of support so that these kids go out and face a challenge that is quite daunting and difficult for them. Now, within this model, it also consists of two pieces of feedback. Okay, and we'll circle back to this a little bit later. But an interesting stat here that this type of performance feedback has been shown to improve performance by 53% on average after being instituted properly. So that's great to see, and it's a good piece of information and evidence for us to really look at how we do provide feedback. So developmental feedback informs us on how to improve and develop, while motivational feedback encourages and informs about what has been effective in the development process. Like I said, we're going to circle back to this a little bit later when we look at how we can train pressure. So once again, we are looking at environment types. So when you look at this basic model, it's going to be overlaid with a matrix with a variety of environments. So here's our basic, right? Support on the bottom, challenge up on this side. We overlay it here. Now we have support here still. We have challenge here still. But altogether, you're going to have the different environment types. So stagnant, low support, low challenge, unrelenting environment, low support, high challenge, a comfortable environment where there's high support, low challenge, and then of course our facilitative environment, which is what we're striving for, where it's high support and high challenge. So one more time, just to kind of clarify again, this is where our matrix is coming from to look at environments in a different way. So stagnant environment, what are the characteristics of that? We've probably experienced this in some capacity. Unseen leaders or managers, people aren't stimulated, a culture of mediocrity. There is little going on day in and day out. Good performance is kind of just happening, and unhealthy competition. People don't really know what to do or don't care. Moving along to an unrelenting environment, and unfortunately this extreme environment, extreme challenge with no support, you kind of has come out of this culture of toughening up performers. Okay, and this is where we see that creeping in of developing mental toughness is, it's unrelenting, put them through their paces, sink or swim, high stress and burnout. The performance is unsustainable because the demands are so high and their athletes are not getting supported. Not a ton of care for the well-being of people if they're sleeping enough, because if we don't sleep, that means we're being tough, and if we can perform with little sleep, that's intense, right? That's exciting. That's toughening up, where we don't need 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Fortunately, I think these environment types are starting to go away and be a thing of the past. But unfortunately, there's also that tying in of, we can toughen up a little bit if our environment's a little bit unrelenting. In the same breath, unrelenting environment is terrible, and so is a comfortable environment. Too cozy, people are nice typically, and nice in a sense that not really pushing you to get better. People are bored. Conversations that are difficult are avoided. Underperformance is not addressed. It's whatever. We're not going to address it because there might be difficult conversations. And a happy performer will be a great performer, and that's not to be mistaken in any way. A happy performer in all domains is great to have, but sometimes that doesn't work out, because in the world of sport, we're supposed to challenge everybody, which causes stress. But if we support everyone with a high amount, we should see some success as well. So let's look at what a supportive environment looks like here. So there is supportive challenge towards a goal. Individuals are open to seeking out challenges to develop. It's psychologically safe. So if you make a mistake, you're not going to be berated or belittled. It's a safe place to make a mistake. Like, this is where you can make mistakes, is with us as a group and as a team. And, as a coaching staff, we want you to screw up so then we can help teach you and coach you to become better. There's definitely a feeling of we're in this together. So at the end of the day, this is what everyone's striving for. This is what we're really working towards is, can we create this facilitative environment? And this is where a lot of magic happens with athletes and finding success. Now, how do we train pressure? We can look at it through pressure inurement training. Okay, now this is based on a lot of literature and creating a model in which we can guide how we put our athletes through the paces, I guess you can say. Inurement's just a fancy word for accustomed to hardship, difficulty and pain, to toughen or harden, to make someone used to something pretty much. So that's the model up in here. We're going to break this down. I hate presenting models because sometimes it gets a little confusing and a little iffy and in the weeds, but for the most part, I think we can break it down here for us to have a good understanding, especially to go back and look at this presentation to see, how can we apply it with our athletes and groups. So this training involves gradually increasing pressure on an individual or group through the challenge that we impose on it and then the manipulation of the environment. So we're going to increase the demands of the stressor. This could be the drill, the skill, the component that we're working with athletes, making it more competitive, the frequency, the intensity, adding unfamiliar challenges, increased attention on feedback. So this is what we're talking about, that motivational and developmental feedback. So importance of what is being worked on, what's our goals, our purpose, and the consequences. So we're going to look at that, like I said, a little bit more in detail. So here's the model. So I'll try my best here to simplify for everybody. So right here, we would have the athlete, right? Looking at the personal qualities, which we've learned is their personality and then their skills. Now, depending on what we're working on, is going to inflict some adversity and stress, right? And then the athlete's going to appraise and look at that stress in a different way. Some might see a hard, intense practice as being exciting, as beneficial. Some might see and appraise a hard and intense practice or drill as being really stressful and frightening and uncomfortable and not enjoying it. But hopefully we're with player A who's loving the hard practice. Their response you're seeing is facilitative. You're seeing positive outcomes with what you're putting the athletes through. So we're going to want to increase that developmental feedback, okay? And then we're going to increase the significance, the importance of whatever you're working on, and increase the demand, right? So we might, instead of, I want you to succeed at this drill, 2 out of 5 times, I want you to succeed 4 out of 5 times. Okay, and if you don't do this 4 out of 5 times, there's going to be punishment in some capacity, not physical punishment, but maybe you get to miss out on the shootout drill at the end of practice or something that's maybe a little bit more fun related. So once again, when we're seeing the athletes respond and appraise the practice or the drill or the game as being manageable, facilitative, good responses, positive outcomes, we're going to increase developmental feedback and increase significance and demand. Hopefully we have good outcomes here. So we're talking about, once again, developmental feedback, okay? Developmental feedback. What does that look like? Developmental feedback is us informing on how to improve in development. So we're going to be providing specific information about behaviors that should be performed, levels of proficiency that should be achieved. So once again, you should be able to do this. I expect to see this look like this or that. Okay, you should be able to do this based on video I've shown you and everything else. And then specific information about the performer's current level of proficiency. So right here, you can be honest with the athlete. Right now, you're here at this. I really want you to be here. Okay, let's push it. Let's get to a place where you can get to where I think you can be and where you can get to. So definitely more on how to improve. Now, when we look at the second half, so same thing, athletes appraising the stress or the practice, and maybe it's not going well. Maybe the responses aren't good. So we're seeing a debilitative response. We're going to get negative outcomes, as in the drill not being completed successfully or the athlete not understanding the system. This is where we want to increase motivational feedback, and we're going to be increasing practice and increasing learning. All right. And this is going to happen in a way through motivational feedback that isn't going to be so much as critical as much as it's pushing the individual in a direction to enhance confidence, inspire greater effort, increased energy, creating a positive mood. The poor performance feedback should motivate, provide satisfaction. This is where we can start integrating some goal setting to get really specific and help provide clarity to the athlete in regards to what you're expecting of them or hoping to see. Now, in reality, you're probably using both developmental and motivational feedback already, and you're probably using it interchangeably and at the same time. But when we feel stuck or when we're really trying to hit home a point, we can look back on that model and go with, okay, where am I at here? Are my athletes, responding in a negative way? Maybe I do need to touch on motivational feedback a little bit more. Or maybe, we can push our kids a bit harder. Let's increase the developmental feedback. So once again, like I said, you can come back on this presentation and dig into that a bit more. A great quote here: comfort the troubled and trouble the comfort. Kind of goes along with the lines of, if you're get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and all those cliches that we use and that we hear. But at the end of the day, it's fairly accurate. Okay, now we're going to move along to a challenge mindset. And apologies if I am going through this quite quickly, but like I said, there's a lot of great information in here, and you luckily have the opportunity to go back on YouTube and run through this again and kind of go through this at your own pace. But I do feel it necessary to get a lot of information in here while I got your attention. We're going to move along to challenge mindset, the third component. And this is an ability to positively evaluate and interpret the pressure they encounter. So when someone is faced with an adversity, can they evaluate it and use self-talk or use some cognitive abilities to manage it? Now, the ability to create and maintain a challenge mindset is largely predicted by the personal qualities of the individual and an immersion in a facilitative environment. Okay, so once again, multiple layers, a lot of pieces to this puzzle. How does our thinking work? Well, initially there's a primary appraisal. So when something happens, you think, well, how might this affect me and do I care? A lot of times this is happening without us realizing we're doing this. The second piece, what can I do about this and will it be enough? And then there's metacognition and meta emotion, where we're evaluating our own thoughts and emotions in the moment. This is what we call thinking about thinking. So let me break this down through an example. I'm one of the top players on the team. I have an established role. I'm having a great season. I just find out we've acquired a new player who is very talented and has a ton of skills. Now, my primary appraisal, how might this affect me and do I care? I might think, does this threaten my position on the first line? Who is this guy? Does this hurt my current position on the team? Does this even matter? Do I even care? Then you go into secondary appraisal. What can I do about this and will it be enough? Will my current effort, the success that I've had, my position on the team be enough? Do I need to do more? This is where you start thinking about, maybe you get thinking more about coaches. Where do they see me? Do I need to go talk to them? And now we get into the metacognition and that meta emotion where we're starting to thinking about thinking, where we're overthinking. This could be good for me and the team. This is great for us. What did the coaches think about me? Well, I don't know what the coaches think about me. What do they think? Should I be feeling this? I think it's okay to feel this way. And this happens, right? This is an example that we probably see with our athletes every year if we are moving them around, if there are trades occurring within our organization. So this is just a more in-depth example of how our thinking works and the process. Once again, like I said, I want to try to do simple better and go back to the basics. So let's look at it through the ABC model. A standing for adversity. Okay, now adversity is an event that gets a reaction from us. We can also look at the A as an activating event. So you can think about what pushes your buttons, what frustrates you, what is challenging to you, what is an adversity that gets under your skin. Okay, that's going to activate and get us to start the ball rolling and creating beliefs about whatever is happening. So beliefs are thoughts about the adversity or the event. What is your in the moment belief? And then your belief influences your emotions and behavior. In a couple slides, I'll break this down for you even a little bit further to get a better understanding of this ABC model. Okay, and of course, these can be positive and negative. And there's going to be consequences to our beliefs at the end of the day. What we think and what we believe about a certain situation will influence us in the moment. There's going to be positive and negative consequences on emotions and behaviors. Breaking it down, if we really want to look at this model, like I said, it can be adversity or activating event, but let's start with this example here from a classic textbook. So your team must defend against a potentially game-winning penalty kick in the state championship. That's the event. That's what's going on in the moment. Next, we kick into our beliefs. What's going on? So it can be negative or positive, right? The event is going to trigger a belief. So I really will be a rotten goalie if I let this player make this kick. I'll never have such a great opportunity to be the hero again. Don't blow it, right? Pressure, some stress, some anxiety, framed in a negative way. Or, you know what, I've prepared well for this moment. I know how this guy handles the ball in penalty situations. Even though this is a pressure-packed situation, I'm confident I can defend against this kick. Really great example if in the moment thinking. Now, there's going to be consequences to the beliefs, right? If we go negative, we're probably going to feel stress and anxiety, which is could be potentially debilitative. Or we can go with a positive belief where we're feeling challenged and excited, and then our behaviors in turn, negative belief, negative emotions, feeling tense, diffident, flustered, poor concentration, slow to pick up the ball, poor reaction, right? That's going to be a negative effect. In reverse, hopefully, if we go with a positive belief, which is going to probably set us up better at the end of the day, we're going to feel challenged and excited. You're going to feel more focused, confident, maybe your reaction time's a bit better. And that's the process we go with. Okay, this is a great activity I do with athletes to really break down a situation in their life that's bothering them. Really try to show them there's two options here. We can go with your belief and your thinking. You can choose the negative, but the consequences are most likely going to be things like stress and anxiety, where if we can try to at least train to be aware of where you go in the direction of your belief, positive or negative, we can start hopefully going with more of the positive belief, which hopefully comes out more positive at the end. We can look at this in a bit more details with those belief and consequences connections, okay, the BC connections. When your belief you feel is a violation of your rights, the consequences are more likely to be anger. So, for example, right now, people are trying to deal with having to stay at home and not going into work. People feel like it's the right that they can go to work. People feel like it's the right to go to the gym. They are angry. Okay, you're driving in the parking lot. You find the ideal parking spot. This is my right to park here at Superstore. You're about to turn in. Someone whips in and steals that ideal spot that you feel it's your right to park there, and you're going to feel angry. Okay, that's a belief consequences connection. I mean, real world loss or loss of self-worth, maybe you get traded, a breakup, death, an intense loss of a game, right? You're going to feel sad and depressed. Violation of someone else's rights, maybe using someone else's stick in a game or a pickup game for fun and you end up breaking it. Feel guilty. Maybe not calling your parents on their anniversary. You didn't put it in your calendar. Forgetting to call your friend on their birthday. You're going to feel guilt. Future threat belief, anxiety and fear. What does that look like? New player coming into the team, a new coach coming into the team. There could be a future threat here that this new coach doesn't like me. I'm feeling some anxiety and some fear. And then once again, negative comparison, not being able to lift as much as another teammate, not being able to be as fast as another teammate, negative comparison. I'm not good enough. I'm not fast enough. You're going to feel embarrassment. So that's the two connections there. So I'm aware of the time here. We're at 11:48 Mountain Time where I'm at, approaching that 45-minute mark. So I'll just wrap up the presentation here with some of the evidence from research here showing what some characteristics of team resilience looks like. And this is coming off of an article that's fairly recent from 2019, where the group of researchers looked at an English National League winning semi-professional rugby team. Okay, so this is quite a talented group in a sport that has a lot of physical demands, a lot of contact and aggression, similar to the sport that we're in. So it's a nice little match. And then the great thing with this study, they collected a ton of data in a ton of different ways: observation, interviewing, field notes. They got reflection diaries from the players, and they came up with 5 descriptors that indicated team resilience. And so you're going to see all of these here. So these are components that you can look at with your own teams, with your own business, or whatever you're applying this to. So in a resilient team, there was inspiring, motivating, and challenging team members to achieve performance excellence. Here's the strategies that this group used to do that. And you can probably go through this and slow it down. Like I said, pause it, take a look at it and go, oh yeah, I've done this with my team. Yeah, we've done this before. We've created team protocols. Yeah, we've created profiles to recruit team players. And then also, the great thing with the study, they looked at some of the terms that they use associated with inspiring, motivating, and challenging team members to achieve performance excellence, right? Things like step it up, see the big picture, there's a buzz about the place. Some of those things that we can identify that they are suggesting here in their research are contributed to some team resilience. The second piece, develop a team regulatory system based on ownership and responsibility. Okay, so this is going to help lead to team resilience. Now, how do we do that? Define leadership roles. Okay, things we've probably all done and do. Encourage and monitor individual and collective performance and tasks. Here's some goal setting. Here's some those performance assignments we might give our players. Exchange honest feedback, avoid blame. Okay, leadership groups. Okay, things that a lot of us are doing right now to improve our team and lean towards developing team resilience. And once again, here are some terms that they've used in combination of this. Another piece, cultivate a team identity and togetherness based on a selfless culture. Once again, I'm not going to get into the weeds on this too much, but you can see examples here of what you can do, what you can look at. Here are some of the folk terms associated with it as well. I believe this is the second last one. Expose the team to challenging training and unexpected difficult situations. Now, this is starting to tie back to the model that we talked about, looking at how to develop resilience. Once again, here are some of the terms associated with it as well. And the last piece they found, you want to promote enjoyment and keep a positive outlook during stressors. And here you go, here are some things you can look at as well. And then here are some of the language that they've used when trying to promote enjoyment and keeping a positive outlook during the stressors. Now, coach resilience, tying into a lot of the individuals on the call here today. This group also looked at a group of highly professional and fantastic coaches. So 5 Olympic medal winning coaches were interviewed twice over a 12-month period. Once again, this study just came out last month, brand new information. So once again, I'm confident that this group is the first in the hockey world to probably take a look at it at this capacity. So they're able to look at a few different dimensions and then kind of take what the coaches were stressing about and what was causing coaches stress and then put them in these themes. So if we're looking at managing an Olympic environment, this is failure. As an athlete or a coach at Olympic Games or trials, the failure or stress while competing at Olympic Games. So this is similar to us in our environment, stressed about managing our success in our games and the leagues that we're in. Stress about preparing for major events, managing the training process, demands of the competition process. Coaches experience stress with personal well-being, personal life demands, stress of the coaching career, directing an organization, working in a club environment, working at a national center, governing body, managing all of these pieces. Same with us, managing within our local organizations, our CHL teams, our college teams, our professional teams, all cause stress. Now, what are the pieces that allow these coaches to have protective factors, which really means at the end of the day, what did they do to help mitigate or manage the stressors that they experienced? So right now, we're doing that. We're progressive coaching. We're learning about new concepts. We're building a support network right now through doing these types of webinars, having durable motivation, effective decision making. So what does durable motivation mean? Really, it's being able to stay intrinsically motivated, so internally motivated, continuing that self-development, understanding what your extrinsic motivation is, and even when you're faced with setbacks or adversities within the season or within your coaching, you're able to stay motivated throughout all that as well. And then they looked at how they enhanced resilience in athletes, And once again, similar to what we've talked about and what we've heard in other presentations through this program here, is developing a strong coach-athlete relationship. That's going to enhance resilience for sure. Create that facilitative environment, develop a process somewhat like that model we were talking about earlier in the presentation, and understanding those athletes' individual factors, those personal qualities as well. So additional points, just before I wrap up here, the benefits of this approach are wide-ranging and far-reaching, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be the remedy for all mental health and performance problems. It should be part of a holistic psychosocial program. We can also look at emotional intelligence, performance intelligence, counseling for athletes, adding in some mindfulness, of course, leadership education and training. There's the biofeedback and the cognitive visual training that's becoming quite popular. So the information I provided, it's great information, it's excellent information, but at the end of the day, it's not the end all be all, right? And I think that's important to understand in kind of everything we do, that we need to be open-minded and looking at a variety of things, because it is individual specific, it is context specific, and maybe there's pieces of this model that I presented that worked for one group, but maybe doesn't work for another group. So then you have to look into it and see how that works and fits. So that's where that flexibility needs to occur. So in summary, if we're looking at the science again, more work needs to be done with concepts of mental toughness and grit as being a valid concept. Psychological resilience is the ability to use personal qualities to withstand pressure. A holistic and systematic approach to develop resilience consists of looking at personal qualities of their skills and their personality, developing a challenge mindset, and creating a facilitative environment. And more research is emerging, examining how to develop resilience in sporting contexts, and specifically with coaches and teams. So there's always more and more information emerging, and as it comes out, hopefully we can make it more public and continue to deliver information in these formats for everybody. And hopefully in time we can be doing this in person and in a group. But for now, that's my presentation, and we can take some questions. So once again, feel free to reach out to me through email and ask anything. I'm more than welcome to share my presentation as well, or the information and resources in it. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Thank you for your attention.
That's fantastic, Josh. Thanks a lot for taking the time to share your knowledge with us, and some great examples, I thought, of trying to get your message through to everybody. Much appreciated. As you stated, if anybody has additional questions, your email will be provided, and it's up on the screen there towards the end during your summary part. So if anybody wants to follow up with a question for you later, they're more than happy to do so. A couple questions, and then we'll, because we're right up at the top of the hour, and then we'll move along. Any suggestions for like a lot of the coaches viewing this come from a number of different backgrounds and leagues, etc. So any suggestions on where a coach can start with developing resiliency within their group without having access to a professional like yourself, whether the coaches are in minor hockey or whether some of the junior leagues or junior programs just don't have those types of resources available to them? Any suggestions from you as to what a coach could get going with?
In all honesty, having a conversation with, having a definition for yourself of what resilience is, and then bringing that to your group and having a discussion with those players, even at a minor hockey level, with kids that are 10 to 12 years old, all the way up through junior levels to the professional levels. What does resiliency look like to us, you guys? Like, in this room, we have a ton of talented players, a bunch of great people, but it's going to look different for us. So, what characteristics do we have in this group? And have a conversation with them. They might not have a clue. So come prepared with maybe what you want to, feed into them, or what you would like to see as a coach. But you go back through this presentation and take a look at those last 5 or 6 slides. Those are going to give you a really good indication of some activities that you can do. And it doesn't have to be fancy, a whiteboard and pen. You don't need to have a PowerPoint. You can, go for a group trip at the local firehouse. right? And have them talk about, what it means to be tough and resilient and how they work together as a team, and what that looks like. YouTube clips. You can look at clips from the All Blacks, our great organization, who are world renowned for being resilient and being able to display those pieces. So it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be super simple. But yeah, go back in the presentation and take a look at those last slides, and they should be able to give you a good start in regards to, where you can go with your teams at any level.
One question that came up just with respect to your work with the Blades in Saskatoon.
Mm.
What does your year kind of look like with them? Like, are you there every day with the team? Do you have it obviously be mapped out into the overall season plan? But what kind of, why don't you give the viewers kind of a rundown of your opportunity there?
Yeah, for sure. So with the Saskatoon Blades, going into my third season, it's evolved over the last 2 years. I mean, the first year, it was more of an introductory year, a new coaching staff, a new group. We were trying to really get a feel for one another, understand how we all worked, and probably turned into being about 20 to 30 days with the team in person, doing group presentations with them, doing individual work with the players while I'm there. And that looks like a different in a few different ways. Okay, so when I'm with the team, it could be as simple as going into a press box and sitting with a guy and talking about, what's going on. It could be as simple as going for coffee with a player and talking about, whatever they want to talk about and work on. Last year, it turned into approximately about 45 days with the team in person. So in the off season, I would sit down with the coach and our manager, and we would look at points in the season. Okay, what worked with my schedule? What worked with them? Timing of games, timing of travel on the road when they're in Alberta. Convenient for me to meet them in Red Deer, hop on the bus, and travel around with the team for 4 or 5 days. Even provide some relaxation sessions in the hotel to help the players manage the stress of travel and getting to sleep a bit quicker. But then a lot of times really trying to target the weeks where there's a lot of practice time where I can access the players, because as we know, game days are quite busy and players have their own routines on game days, and sometimes hard to access the group or the individuals on days like that. So really trying to target the off days. But when I'm not with the team, I'm also working with individuals distance through FaceTime or tools like Zoom or Skype, whatever the athlete is most comfortable in using, and providing them mental performance action items to work on when I'm not with the group, or even group calls with the coaches to stay in touch with what's happening. My work isn't limited just to the players, but being a part of that integrated team where I am talking with the equipment staff, our athletic therapist, and getting a sense of how the group is with them, right? Because at the end of the day, our athletic therapists are sometimes our unofficial psychologists on the team. They hear everything in that room. Same with our equipment guys. So they're not being rats in any way, for a lack of a better term, but they have a pulse on the team in a different way that the coaching staff does, and in a different way that I have a pulse on the team. So it's really being tied in with everyone as much as possible, and being accessible to the guys, being seen, being around, hanging out in the locker room, and going to games, going to practice, and just being accessible, like I said.
So, great segue into a question that a coach posted here. A lot of mentioned about communication with players is so important these days, and always has been really, but more of an emphasis today. What and a lot of the younger players are provide not a smoke screen, but they'll appear confident, yet inside are struggling with confidence issues or what have you. Any suggestion on how coaches, again, maybe they don't have access to someone like yourself, can kind of deal with players that still are dealing with some of those confidence issues?
Yeah, I mean, if we were to tie it back to the presentation, it would be looking at, okay, am I creating a facilitative environment that is safe for our athletes to screw up, right? Because maybe it's our coaching feedback. It could be, you think you're communicating something to the athletes in a way that you think they're interpreting it. So let me give an example. So let's say maybe you guys didn't have a great game on the ice, and at the end of the game, you're in the locker room, and in your head, you're like, okay, guys, we're going to show up to practice tomorrow and we're going to have a good, hard practice. Meaning you're going to skate hard. It's going to be intense, but by no means is it going to be a punishment. But after a loss, players here, we're going to have a good hard practice. Some players might default to, oh, great, we're going to get bag skated, or we're going to be doing this. Oh, great, right? And another player might hear, oh, yeah, cool, we're going to go work on a few things and get after it. So part of it is having really good clarity in our messages with our players in that communication, to help maybe manage with those individuals who are dealing with some confidence challenges. Understand that younger athletes in Gen Z, which is what we're in right now, need to know the why. So we're going to have a good hard practice. Why are we going to have a good hard practice? And here are some things we'll be doing that explains what a hard practice is. And the why is important. So I think answering the why for some players on what's going on is important. Having an open conversation and dialogue with the players, and just asking, like, hey, how are things at school? How are things with, what do you do on your own time? What's up with Fortnite? Just like be a goof as well. Like be completely honest. I have no clue what Fortnite is. What's going on here? And then you talk about that, and then before you know it, you're talking about Fortnite, and you're talking about their dog at home, and you're talking about their goldfish, and then at the end, hey coach, I have a question about, the game last night. Right? That's a relationship. Being interested in what and who they are as a person, and hopefully that leads into other pieces.
Well, Josh, I think we're going to wrap it up there. And again, if anybody has any more questions and that sort of thing, Josh's email is available, and we'll send it through, because we're right at the top of the hour, if not a little past. And I think we'll call it at that. Thanks so much for being part of this. A great presentation, and it's good to see you again. And thanks for helping doing what we're doing here with educating coaches of different levels, and what you do is such a big part of the game now, and really appreciate the time you took to share a little bit about what you know.
Awesome. Thanks, Murray, and thanks again for having me involved, and look forward to the ones coming up, and hopefully in the future provide some more information for you guys. Once again, stay safe, everyone out there, and thanks again.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.